Good morning, responsible day traders. Today is Monday, February 7th, 2022. I am Lindsay Duff, and this is Responsible Day Trading. Well, tomorrow's my birthday, so I don't expect to do a whole lot of trading this week, although I usually only trade about 1 or 2 days a week these days. Between You Profit Trader and Responsible Day Trading and children and life and trading and recording and working on new curriculum and all that kind of stuff, it takes up some time. So I try and trade when I can and just keep my thoughts in line with continuing to grow and change every day. All right, let's go ahead and get started on what's happening in the markets and see what we got going on for this week. All right, so if you head on over to responsibledaytrading.com, go to this news drop down, go to market news. You can see calendar and market news there, and we can see what's happening this week. Looks like it's going to be a pretty light week. We have nothing today. Tomorrow we have 11 a.m. News. Remember, this is Central Time, so if you're on Eastern Time, it's going to be 10 a.m. Wednesday, 9:30 crude inventories. Thursday, we have some pre-market, and Friday, 9 a.m. A little bit of high impact news. So just keeping those on your mind, especially Tuesday at the 11 a.m. hour. That's kind of an odd time for us to have news coming out. So just kind of keeping that in the backs of our minds in case it decides to just pop off at that time. So let's go ahead and head on over to the market. Let me pull up that daily charts. All righty then. Let's see what's happened. Okay. So we already know we pushed way down hard to this last major pivot area that we held up for a long time, and we pulled back up. Now, this is a very interesting look in the MACDs right here. I want you to kind of take a look at the way these MACDs are behaving. They've got inside of the Bollinger Bands. Now, I know I said it'll be difficult for them to cross that top Bollinger Band. Well, that's what I said last week. We've kind of changed that scenario. But I also want to come back to this previous time we got down here really low and had a pullback. Now, this slowdown happened outside of the Bollinger Bands, while this slowdown is happening inside of the Bollinger Bands. So we prefer to see it on the outside of the Bollinger Bands if we're really going to expect it to break through. Doesn't mean it can't. It's just what we like to see in that situation. So, last time we pulled up to this area, the MACDs pushed up and the EMAs were very weak to the downside. This time they have not even rolled over to the downside quite yet. So there's a couple of different scenarios that could happen right here. And it's really going to take paying attention to what our other tick charts are telling me and making sure that we're just really staying focused on where the direction is instead of trying to make things happen because we think it quote unquote should. So let's talk a little bit about what happened between the price and the MACDs here. So we had a strong push down in both the price and the MACDs. We've gotten inside of the Bollinger Bands and we're inside of the EMAs. So that's kind of I almost want to say 6 of one, half a dozen of the other, because this could easily roll and turn to the downside, roll inside of the Bollinger Bands and continue pushing down. Or maybe we see it come down towards this area again. MACDs have a weak move to the downside and bounce off the Bollinger Bands and continue back up. Or we can see this roll down in both situations, break through that Bollinger Band and just give us if we break through this area, like a strong break through that area, we're going to see some pretty strong moves to the downside. But if this area continues to hold, and especially if this area holds as well, this EMA that tells us more up and we push back up and get back above, I'm going to anticipate us making new highs. So we're going to have to see these BBs really start to separate, show us the ability to break through that top Bollinger Band. We may see it just kind of play around in this area as we have for the last few days. We may see that continue. So you never want to say this is what's going to happen because there's so many different opportunities of what could pan out, right? So we always have to have our mind in that if this happens, then what will I do? So it's that if then situation. So if this rolls off of these EMAs and this Bollinger Band and pushes to the downside, then I'll be looking for more continuation to push this down. If this breaks through the EMAs, if this rolls up and breaks through that top Bollinger Band, if this breaks through the Bollinger Band and this rolls up and breaks through that top EMA, then I'm going to anticipate it to continue up. So always having that if then so that we know what to anticipate and why and what we can expect to do with whatever we anticipate. So speaking of anticipations, let's go ahead and drop that daily chart and bring up the 28,657. Now, the 28,657 is just a little bit higher than that 10,946, and it just gives me the next biggest picture insight. Looking at the 28,657, looks like they are thinking, hey, we're going to be heading back up to the upside. We had a nice little W pivot here, which pushed it up. I wouldn't consider this a failed W. It reached that last little high pivot, but we like to see it push all the way up to that last main high. But what we're noticing here, or what I'm noticing here, is that number one, we are seeing the price action make a floor. It's higher than this last pivot. We've got a bit of what looks like a head and shoulders here to push up. We're at the zero line. We're rolling to the upside weekly, but it's working to do it right now. So if I look at the immediate right now on the 28,657, it has pushed up from this area around the 4470 area, and it's made it up to that 4500. And if these BBs pick up the pace and continue up, we're going to expect this to come up. Right now, it's kind of a weak reaction in the BBs to the upside. There are two BBs. We haven't really moved up, considering we're kind of sitting right at that high where we were at previously here. If these BBs really start picking up some pace and pushing to the upside, I'm going to expect it to make a new high. We did pull away from the EMAs here, and so that is our first breakthrough and pull away to the upside. We did come off of a really strong move that happened to the upside over the last week or the previous week, actually. So last week and the previous week, we made this strong move to the upside. Then the rest of last week, we spent hanging out with that pullback back down to where we have these EMAs marked off on, because this is that large EMA on the daily chart. So right now, the 28,657 is poised to go to the upside. We're going to really need to see what these MACDs are doing, if they're going to start picking up the pace and pushing up, or if they're going to weakly roll back down and see this come back down to meet that last low area. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the immediate picture, right? So we've looked at the long term, then we looked at a little bit shorter long term. Now let's come to the immediate. And this is where I come to my 10,946, my 1597, and my 233. Now, I always like to start reading like a book. So I go left to right. I start with the 10,946. What happened right here is the MACDs pulled back and could not make a new low as we got all of these reversal bars to the upside. And you can see on that 10,946, those MACDs are really working to pick up the pace to separate those BBs to show us strength up. Now, we still have about 4,000 ticks left on this, so that could change in the meantime. But if I'm looking at what's happening on my 1597 and my 233, not really expecting it to change. We are getting up towards that last little intermediate high where we were trying to create what looks like a W pivot on the 10,946. So we had a bigger picture W pivot. Now we've got the smaller picture W pivot, which we would anticipate to come up to here if the W does its job. Okay. So we do see reasons for this to push up. In situations like this, I typically expect it to pull back into the area of these EMAs, but not necessarily has to happen. It's just kind of an expectation to give me more of a valid area to take a long trade. It did give you a couple of little pullbacks right in here with the MACDs on the 1597 showing that retracement divergence, that ultimate retracement divergence as it pulls back into the Bollinger Bands and right here into the EMAs to push up. Now, if we look at the 233, it's trying to show these divergences, saying that the steam has kind of died out a little bit. But remember that 233, we don't want to let it rule us. We just want to look at it for the overall. Now, we had this first little bit of divergence here, and then it came back down, made a higher pivot, pushed up, and has created another little bit of divergence, but I'm pretty sure we're about to smash through that. Just looking at the MACDs on our bigger tick charts, we can't let a little divergence like this really run us. So that's what happens to a lot of people is they say, oh my gosh, there's divergence on the 233. I can't take any more long trades. When in reality, it's really just kind of pushed up a little bit higher. The divergence here is almost like a default. It's almost like the MACD is just kind of trying to catch up so that they can pull back into the area and get synced back up for the continuation to the upside. So we don't have any divergence here on the 1597. I wouldn't consider this pivot in the divergence scenario because once we get back below the EMAs and the zero line, it's shifted that move to the downside. And so now we're looking at the bottom pivots. But now that it's getting back up to the upside, we want to see it break through this area, really pull back into it, and then start looking at those pivots to the upside on the 1597 to determine if a divergence is going to do its job or if a divergence even gets created at that point. So this has pulled back, given a very weak pullback at this moment, and it definitely is looking like more up to me. Honestly, if I come back to this daily chart too, this really does look like more up for me. It's a little early to tell because yes, these BBs can roll and push back down. But it looks like we're going to possibly see this start giving us some positive moves to the upside. We're just going to have to wait and see. So, all right, guys, that's going to wrap that up for this morning. Don't forget that we do have a 45% discount on the vault this month for my 45th birthday. It's going to run through the 15th. And then after that, it'll go back to its normal price. We do, though, have a 5-day free trial, so you can check it out, see if it's something that you want to be a part of. And it's really the videos that you see me make on YouTube, but it's the much more longer extended version with a lot more explanations as to what I'm seeing. So that might be something that you choose to use as a tool, which I've heard from a few students that that's one of the best tools that they've had available to them. So I'm really excited to be able to share that with all of you. Also, don't forget that we have a 40% discount on UProfit Trader using the code UPRO40. So the code for the vault is BDay45. The code for UProfit Trader is UPRO40. So, all right, folks, that's going to wrap it up. I hope that everybody has a wonderful week. And as always, you know that I look forward to catching you on the profitable side.